Hello and welcome to VerDarLuz, Divine Timing Coaching, and the February astrology forecast, the first half of the month as we explore the full moon this month in Leo. It's a very exciting and pretty intense full moon. And we're going to look at Valentine's Day and all of the astrology for that as well. So here we have the chart, and let's dive in before we get into the full moon and just give some overall themes of what we're really working with this month. As a lot of my intuition is coming in, it's a month that is sort of, middle of the winter and a time to really sort of consolidate what we've been learning for many months. We had Mercury go direct, we had Mars go direct in the last few weeks. And so we have actually all of the planets, if you can see here, all the planets are direct. And that means there's a lot of forward motion. There's a lot of energy moving us forward, but we're also at there's a little bit more of a still point right now. Now, during the full moon, the energy is quite potent, but overall this month, it's not as strong as it will be actually in March. Usually we think of March as a very chill time, before the spring season, but we'll have Venus go into Aries at the end of this month. So that's going to really amp up a lot of energy, and Venus will conjunct Jupiter and Chiron. So that's going to bring a lot more passion and fire and motivation to us. But first, on the 1st of February, what are we looking at? Well, Venus is in her sign of exaltation, Pisces. And this is a very juicy version of the goddess. This is cinematic. This is, Hollywood-esque. This is the goddess who wants romance and sort of the living mythology, right? And there's something very spiritual to this goddess. She's very connected to the spirit world. There's the sort of the magic, and, in relationships with Venus and Pisces right now, we want to tune in to the heart space really deeply, and also to our spiritual connection with another. In A Course in Miracles, they call this the holy relationship, right? Really the sense of having no agenda, but showing up to receive spirit, God consciousness through our relationship together, even if that is a friendship or a, therapist and client or counselor and client. It's about really connecting to the soul of the relationship or the soul contract. Now, this is quite beautiful, right? Venus and Pisces, but we have this interesting thing this whole week where Venus is squaring Mars. And here's Mars at 10 Gemini, Venus at 7. So all week as we move towards the full moon on the 5th, we're going to have this square. And that brings, tension between the feminine and masculine energies. And there can be just a lot of shifty energy here, and because we're in mutable signs, a lot of changes. It's a spicier type of energy, right? When you have Venus and Mars square, there is a lot of chemistry going on with that, and it can be very passionate, but can also be defensive, more irritable. Maybe if Venus's ideals aren't being met in Pisces, right? Or sometimes her fantasies, right? Or her projections of perfection. These are all potential shadows of Venus and Pisces, that we want paradise now in this moment. And we can have that if we don't write a script about that. So with Venus Mars square, we have to be careful, because Mars in Gemini is writing many scripts, right? Gemini is the sign of the messenger. And Mars in Gemini for the last few months, right? He's been throwing us all over the place. He's keeping us very scattered. And so we have to watch that we're trying to do too much with this. And maybe it's like there is kind of a woundedness that can come into the heart, but we can really, I think there could be a lot of beauty that can happen in this cycle. And we can actually bring really tantric, sacred sexuality with this energy, very, very strong bondedness potentially, if we work out the kinks of whatever the Mars Venus square brings up. So tune into that this week. It's especially going to be strong right around Friday, and about February 3rd, February 4th. These are the peak dates. Let's move forward here, and we'll see exactly when that happens. It's going to be on the 5th, actually on the day, just the day. Let's see, there we go. So let's get the hour exact here for the full moon, and we'll jump to the full moon. So here you'll see the sun is at 16 Aquarius on the 5th, and then we're going to have the moon right there. And here we are around, Mountain Time, 10:50. But this is the full moon. And what makes this full moon so rather intense and excitable, but also a lot of change in the sky, we should expect a lot of, being very malleable and flexible. There's going to be some new information coming in, a lot of surprise potential because of Uranus. Uranus is actually in a very strong square to the sun and moon here, see 15 degrees. And this is bringing up, a potential for a radical shift for some of us during this full moon, especially if we have planets that are, say, between 10 degrees and 20 degrees of the fixed signs, which would be Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. So those parts of your chart that are in those degrees, they have been hit very strong by the eclipses this year. So actually this full moon is bringing up some of the themes that we addressed back in November and even back in May of this last year. So if you've moved, if you've changed relationships, if you change career paths, something is going to get triggered with that likely during this full moon. And we should expect, again, another moment of potential chaos, but that can, that disruption that Uranus brings can also bring epiphanies and awakenings and ahas and new possibilities for us. So this can also be a very innovative moon, but it is adding a bit of chaos into the mix here, and something that we should be aware of. Now, there is also something to pay attention to here with this full moon in terms of foresight into this summer, because this summer we actually have Venus going retrograde in Leo. So we're going to have a long cycle of Venus and Leo for about 4 months. It's going to peak around August this year. And she's going to be hanging out around these degrees. And, she'll be in a square with Uranus a lot of that time. And that could bring a lot of change in our relationships, surprises, exciting new relationships, but also a lot of change. And, sometimes Venus-Uranus breaks up relationships, because it's not maybe that evolutionary drive that Uranus wants, or the excitement or the paradigm shift to something new and novel. So look at this full moon and kind of feel into some patterns, some energies that might be with us, as we go 6 months out from now. Actually, we're going to have the new moon in Leo instead of the full moon. And that's going to be right at the peak moment when we'll have that Venus cycle in Leo and the Venus going retrograde. So there is going to be something, maybe it's about the community you're around right now, the Aquarian community. Maybe they play a significant role at that summertime. Maybe it's about festivals. Maybe you're connecting with certain events that are going to happen in the summer. Maybe you're going to participate in some way, and you're learning about that right now. That could be one expression of this. But there is some connection between what's happening during this full moon and potentially what we'll see in the summer. So this is also important to note during this full moon is that we are having, we said the Venus-Mars square exact, but we're also having Mercury, who's been in Capricorn for a couple months now, right? With the retrograde, he's continuing to finish this journey in the sign of ambition. And this is really compelling us to, ask ourselves what success really means to us, and what kinds of business relationships, negotiations, connections do I have to form, especially with the sun in Aquarius right now. It's also about planning and productivity. Mercury in Capricorn is a very accountant type of mind, and so being responsible to our daily tasks and getting very organized is really important. But this is leading us over the next days, and as we go towards the Valentine's days, let's go into move the days forward. Watch what happens with Mercury here. Mercury's just getting closer and closer to Pluto. And we could say definitely by the 7th, 8th, and that whole week after, we're going to have this Mercury-Pluto conjunction again, which you remember back at New Year's. That's when Mercury and Pluto, came together and he went retrograde. So think about what was going on. There was some message, maybe some intense, maybe shadow piece that came up that you dealt with. Maybe something in the news often comes out around, leaking of files or hidden, secret agendas. That's very Mercury, Pluto. Pluto is always excavating into either our personal unconscious or the shadows of the collective. So note that Mercury, Pluto also can be a time where we can do a lot of really great research, really investigate, ask why, go to the source, right? Given that it's Capricorn, right, we might be thinking about, again, like, how can I empower myself with my career? And if I'm not there, what do I need to do to take those, Capricorn steady step-by-step path to actually accomplish my goals and be more impactful? Now, Mercury, Pluto, we have to be careful to use words in a very destructive way or our thoughts in that way too. So this is time to become very mindful of our thoughts. And, any of those negative belief systems or self-destructive thought patterns we can really work with. I love A Course in Miracles as a great teaching for mindfulness around this, but any mindfulness practice, we want to amp it up during the Mercury, Pluto. I love the Stoic teachings as well around this, and making sure that we're not using like gossip or like talking about things that are external to our own nature, as the Stoics speak of, like, that doesn't really build my character, but actually takes my energy out of myself. And so with Mercury, Pluto, we want to just go into the source and really ask deeper questions. And but we tend to flow into conversations around like conspiracy theories and like who's running the world, right? Pluto power, oligarchs. And so note that our topics may get quite intense at that time. And then you're going to see, right, as we move forward, as we approach Valentine's, here's Valentine's Day. So now we're about halfway into the month, right? And there is a lot of really interesting and sort of contradictory energies going on that day. So let's look at this. Over this week, let's back it up till about the 10th, okay? And we're going to see that the sun is starting to get pretty close to Saturn. Now, this is intense because it's really bringing us for the last month, right? Because Saturn is about to change signs to Pisces for the next 2.5 years. So this is the last time we're going to see this Sun-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And as you see on Valentine's, it's within 2 degrees. And, every time the sun and Saturn come together, we have this sort of more serious or sober type of tone going on. Now, one of the best ways of working with that is to get very constructive with our energy, very productive, very focused, Saturn, right? Work with time, get, if you're not really in a great schedule, this is a way to really work with that and be more disciplined, right? And also feel into some longer term orientation of your goals, right? That's always good Sun-Saturn combination. And also the idea of authoring our own lives and becoming an authority, and how we are expressing our authority in the world, what we know, and really within our communities, with the visions and the ideals and the goals and causes, Aquarius, that we stand for, and who are the people that are part of our visionary team, right? And so taking that leadership role can be a great, way to use this transit, but it also brings us to this reflective process, because Saturn is, although Saturn's a lot about hard work, Saturn has a lot to do with solitude and the process of deep reflection. And it's not like mystical reflection. It's more like really serious self-study and like owning up to where I'm not maybe following through on my commitments or what my longer goals are, right? And so there's a kind of serious self-examination that comes up, and we might want to be looking at where Saturn has been for us for the last 2.5 years in the Aquarius house of our chart, because that's where there's been a real serious drive to accomplish and achieve, and this has been where our hardest lessons have been, really, for where Saturn has been the last 2.5 years. And hopefully by the end of next month, when Saturn changes signs into Pisces, we're going to have integrated the journey that Saturn has been in whatever house that's been for us in the Aquarius journey. And there's going to be a consolidation of those themes for us. And it's really important that we take this time to meditate on, reflect, and I would say even through writing and journaling, like crystallize what's happened, because we're making a step forward with Saturn into Pisces, into a new house, into a new area of life for us. And it's very important that we feel completed with this position that Saturn's been in our chart. And if not, we really need to look at the next month as a time to, taking all those sort of loose tendrils and weaving them together into like a stronger cohesion, right? Because if we don't finish the work of where Saturn is, it lingers into the next house. And then it makes it more difficult as we're beginning the new journey of where Saturn is. We still have like unfinished business from the previous house. And this can create a lot of tension and stress for us. Often when Saturn changes signs, there's just a lot of intensity, right? We're like culminating one energy and we're kind of like done with that, right? And then we're like moving into something new, but we're a little naive of like how to really like become a master at that. That's going to take a few years. And so are you mastering where Saturn has been in the last couple of years, or is it still like, I don't have this figured out at all? Or maybe I have it figured out and it's a lesson of a lot of what I don't want here, and I've chiseled away, which is a Saturn theme of, I always like to use the metaphor of sculpture, right? Like Michelangelo, like that's not the core. That's not the essence, right? That's not the bones or the real structure. And Saturn wants to get right to like, okay, that's it. That's what we need, the minimal, right? And so this could be also a time to consider being more minimal. And yet, Venus Neptune has nothing minimal about her. And on Valentine's Day, this is a really sweet combination to have. But it's extremely indulgent. And so what do we have? We have Venus in Pisces, the sign that Neptune has affinity with, right? So you have kind of a double Pisces Venus going on here. And this is a goddess that we should really have on Valentine's, this really, and even in the days before, the days right after, the weekend of, we can have this really magical and mystical spiritual union with our partners. If we're with our friends, beloveds, a community, this is a great time to be in sort of a festive atmosphere, right? And be creating, making music and dance, like ecstatic dance, cacao ceremonies, really, really sweet with this. And a beautiful time, again, to practice sacred sexuality, and even to like invoke God and goddess archetypes. Maybe you work with your Venus and Mars. I have some teachings about Venus and Mars. And if you know your position of the god and goddess in your chart with your partner, you can maybe do some, mythical play or costume play, cosplay with your Venus and Mars, because Neptune is very theatrical and dramatic. And so we can have some of that element. Now, we have to be careful with that, with Venus Neptune, that we aren't creating unnecessary drama, or like, it's like a cheesy romantic comedy, right? Where things have to be so extreme and like so up and down, and like, we want those moments of ecstasy without necessarily a roller coaster ride. And I think that what we're going to feel, right, because there is that serious, at times heavy, almost burdensome type of feeling with Sun Saturn. And so I get a sense like, wow, can we bring this kind of magic and, real soul union connection of Venus Neptune, and do that, learn how to do that in a sustainable way? Maybe this is a good time to do a recommitment ceremony for some of us, right? If we are in a partnership, or a recommitment ceremony to ourselves, or to our connection with spirit and guidance and our higher self. Could be great. Because Saturn really loves commitments. And so yeah, just feeling into what this wants to, this kind of celebratory Venus Neptune wants to express itself through you and your relationships around Valentine's Day. And just note that that day has quite a lot of spice in addition because of where the moon is. So the moon, this is again mountain time, but if we move it kind of forward, oh, sorry, that's the day. Let's look at the hours. Over the course of the day, the moon is just getting closer and closer to this, basically this opposition with Mars. And so in the evening, at least like in a lot of the states, you're gonna have the moon opposite Mars. And so again, emotionally, we can get kind of triggered with something with that. And so I wouldn't be surprised, right, if we're like entering into this really juicy union, oneness kind of vibe, but then something comes up to pull us out of that, or like there's some kind of reaction, and we need to kind of look at that. And as we teach in Tantra, right, like every emotion is like a movement of Shakti, of the goddess. And so, okay, we can witness that through Shiva, through awareness, but not be owned by that, right? Not overly identify with that. So likely there's some reaction or trigger, or if it's not through us, it's somebody around us, or we're driving on the road. And this is a very kind of, Moon Mars opposition, and especially with Gemini, it's like definitely could be some like angry, road ragey type of energy. So be careful with that. But this is, this is quite passionate, so it can be used in some really great sexual ways. But it's just a really a fiery energy there. Moon's in Aries, fire sign, which is ruled by Mars. So there's there is a lot of ignition there, and we got to be careful to not throw fuel or make the fire bigger than we might want it to be, right? Because this is very watery over here, right, and very merged. And when we bring that fire in, it could sometimes be very destructive. But I like to think of this as a very very motivating kind of transit with the moon Mars. And so again, what do we really want in relationship, and what do we need to do to take realistic Sun Saturn steps to bring that divine union into flesh? And I'll just mention one last thing here for our forecast, which for the first half of the month, which is we're approaching that Jupiter Chiron conjunction, which is coming really strong towards the end of the month and the beginning of March. And so this is going to be for all of us a time to really get inspired to do some deep healing work and to find mentors in our life and coaches and therapists. Jupiter Chiron, it's just very expansive around doing the wounded healer work. And so we can step into that role in a bigger way. And we're getting clear about what that might mean for us. What kinds of activities, maybe we need new media if we want to get onto certain media. Maybe we need new community that we're a part of. But look at the archetype of the healer and the mentor and the coach, and how that is growing in you, and how you can source that from those around you. So I hope this has been really inspiring to you, and we'll come back next at the new moon, and we'll explore more about the cycles going into the second half of February. And check out some more videos. Definitely subscribe. We'll have videos on locational astrology, human design, and mystical teaching. So it's been an honor to be with you today. All the best. Namaste.